The heavy mahogany doors of the courtroom creaked as they swung open, revealing a tense silence that seemed to hum beneath the polished surfaces of Ashwood County Courthouse. A young woman, Emily Harper, stepped inside, her boots echoing softly on the marble floor. At her side, a massive German shepherd named Titan moved with deliberate grace, his fur marked by a jagged scar that ran from his shoulder to his flank, a remnant of a past that neither he nor Emily spoke of often. The room, filled with the weight of anticipation, fell quieter still as every eye turned toward them. Titan's amber eyes scanned the space, alert and unyielding, while Emily's gaze remained fixed ahead, her jaw tight with resolve. Judge Clara Whitmore, a woman with silver-streaked hair and a reputation for unyielding fairness, leaned forward from her elevated bench. Her gavel rested untouched, but her eyes carried the weight of the trial, a case that had gripped the small town of Ashwood, nestled in the frost-bitten hills of northern Vermont. Across the courtroom, Victor Langston sat composed, his tailored suit immaculate, his expression one of calculated calm. Langston, a local businessman with a polished reputation, faced accusations of orchestrating a break-in at Emily's remote cabin 6 months prior. The prosecution claimed it wasn't just theft, but something darker, an attempt to silence Emily, who had uncovered irregularities in Langston's real estate dealings. Yet with no direct evidence and Emily's initial hesitation to testify, the defense had painted her as an unreliable witness, a recluse with a vendetta. Emily took her place at the witness stand, her fingers brushing Titan's leash. The dog positioned himself at her feet, his body taut, ears twitching at the faintest sounds. Judge Whitmore's gaze softened briefly as she noted Emily's steady hands, a contrast to the tremor in her voice when she'd first spoken to investigators. The courtroom's air was thick, not just with the stakes of the trial, but with something intangible, an unspoken bond between the woman and her dog. As the prosecutor, Daniel Pierce, began his questioning, Emily's hand moved subtly, a gesture so small it might have gone unnoticed. But Titan reacted instantly. His head snapped up, a low growl rumbling from his chest, his eyes locking onto Langston with an intensity that sent a ripple through the gallery. The growl wasn't loud, but it was enough. Whispers stirred among the spectators, pencils scratched in reporters' notebooks, and Pierce paused, his eyes flicking to the judge. Whitmore's gavel cracked sharply, silencing the murmurs. "Order," she said, her voice cutting through the tension. "Ms. Harper, please continue." But her eyes lingered on Titan, then shifted to Langston, whose calm facade flickered for the first time, his fingers tightening on the armrest of his chair. Outside in the courthouse's echoing hallway, Emily sat on a wooden bench, Titan pressed against her side. Her friend Rachel Moore, a local bookstore owner who had known Emily since their college days, stood nearby, her arms crossed. Rachel's face was lined with worry, her usual warmth dimmed by months of watching Emily retreat into herself after the break-in. Detective Liam Carver, a grizzled veteran with a penchant for following hunches, leaned against the wall observing. He'd been on the case since the night Emily's cabin was ransacked, her financial documents stolen, and her sense of safety shattered. "That dog knows something," Carver muttered to Rachel. "I've seen K9S react like that before. It's not just training, it's memory." Rachel nodded, her eyes on Emily, who was stroking Titan's fur absently. "She hasn't been the same since that night," Rachel said softly. "But Titan? He's the only thing keeping her grounded." 6 months earlier, Ashwood had been blanketed in a late spring snow, the kind that clung to the pines and muffled the world. Emily Harper, a freelance accountant who preferred the solitude of her cabin to the bustle of town, had been working late, poring over spreadsheets for a local development project. She'd noticed discrepancies in the numbers, offshore accounts, inflated expenses, names that didn't add up. The project was tied to Victor Langston, a man whose charm and wealth had made him a pillar of Ashwood's community. Emily, cautious but curious, had started digging deeper, unaware that her inquiries had caught Langston's attention. That night, she'd stepped outside to let Titan out, the dog pacing restlessly as the wind howled. She'd only turned away for a moment to answer a phone call from Rachel when the sound of shattering glass split the quiet. Titan's bark was immediate, a deep, warning bellow that sent Emily sprinting back to the porch. The front door hung open, papers scattered across the floor, and a figure in a dark jacket was already retreating into the woods. Titan lunged, but Emily grabbed his collar, her heart pounding as the intruder vanished into the snow. She called the police, but by the time Carver arrived, the trail was cold, the snow covering any tracks. The aftermath left Emily shaken. She stopped answering calls, avoided town, and kept her curtains drawn. The stolen documents were backups, but the violation of her home lingered like a bruise. Titan, once a retired K-9 from the state police, became her shadow. He'd been injured years earlier during a drug bust, a knife wound that left him with a scar and a limp, but his instincts remained razor sharp. Dr. Sarah Klein, Ashwood's veterinarian and a friend of Rachel's, had recommended Titan to Emily after the break-in. "He's not just a pet," Sarah had said. "He's a partner." The first time Emily met Titan at the vet clinic, she'd been skeptical. She wasn't a dog person, or so she thought. But when Titan sat still, his eyes meeting hers with a quiet intensity, something shifted. She reached out, her hand brushing his scarred shoulder, and he leaned into her touch. That night, she slept without nightmares for the first time in weeks. Back in the courtroom, the trial stretched into its third day. Pierce presented forensic evidence. Traces of soil from Emily's property found on a pair of boots in Langston's garage. The defense, led by Evelyn Brooks, argued the soil was common in Ashwood, circumstantial at best. But Emily's testimony was the linchpin. She recounted the night of the break-in, her voice steady but soft, describing the shadow in her doorway, the glint of a flashlight, and Titan's unrelenting growl. When asked if she could identify the intruder, she hesitated, then looked at Titan. The dog's ears flicked, and he let out another low rumble, his gaze fixed on Langston. Brooks objected, calling Titan's reaction theatrical nonsense, but Judge Whitmore overruled. "The dog's behavior is noted," she said, her tone neutral but her eyes sharp. In the recess that followed, Carver pulled Pierce aside. "Check Titan's old K-9 records," he said. "He worked a case 3 years ago, a smuggling ring tied to Langston's company. Never went to trial, but Titan was there when they raided a warehouse. He might have crossed paths with Langston." Pierce's eyes narrowed. "You think the dog remembers him?" "I think Titan doesn't forget a threat," Carver replied. The investigation took a turn that evening. Carver and his partner, Officer Maya Torres, dug into Titan's K-9 history. The smuggling case had been a bust, insufficient evidence, witnesses who recanted. But Langston's name appeared as a consultant for one of the shell companies involved. Titan had been injured during that raid, his handler forced to retire him after the wound left him skittish around gunfire. But his memory, it seemed, was intact. Meanwhile, Emily sat in her cabin, the fireplace casting shadows on the walls. Titan lay at her feet, his head resting on her knee. She'd started sketching again, a habit from her college days. Her drawings were simple but vivid. A man in a dark jacket, a cabin surrounded by pines, a dog standing guard. One sketch showed a warehouse, its doors ajar, a memory she didn't fully understand but felt compelled to draw. When she showed it to Rachel, her friend frowned. "This looks like the old mill outside town," she said. "Langston's company bought it last year." Carver, acting on a hunch, requested a search warrant for the mill. The next morning, he and Torres led a small team through the snow-dusted property. Titan, brought along at Emily's insistence, moved with purpose, his nose low to the ground. Near a rusted loading dock, he stopped, pawing at a stack of crates. Beneath them, hidden in a false bottom, they found a cache of documents, financial records, forged leases, and a ledger linking Langston to a network of offshore accounts. The soil on the crates matched Emily's property. The courtroom buzzed as the new evidence was presented. Pierce laid out the findings, each document a thread tying Langston to the break-in and a broader scheme of fraud. Emily took the stand again, this time with a sketch in hand. She described the warehouse from her drawing, her voice stronger now, and pointed to Langston. "I didn't see his face that night," she said, "but Titan did, and he hasn't forgotten." Langston's composure cracked. He leaned toward Brooks, whispering urgently, then stood abruptly. "Your Honor, I'd like to change my plea," he said, his voice strained. Gasps rippled through the room. Judge Whitmore's gavel silenced them. "Are you pleading guilty, Mr. Langston?" she asked, her stare piercing. "Yes," he said, his shoulders slumping. The courtroom erupted. Reporters scrambled. Spectators whispered. Emily stood still, her hand on Titan's head, her eyes fixed on the floor. The gavel fell again, and the trial was over. Weeks later, Ashwood began to heal. Emily, once a recluse, started visiting Rachel's bookstore, Titan at her side. The town rallied around her, and the Noah and Rex Foundation, inspired by their story, was launched to pair trauma survivors with rescue dogs. At the opening ceremony, Emily spoke briefly, her voice clear. "Titan gave me my life back," she said, her hand resting on his scarred shoulder. "He reminded me that trust is stronger than fear." As the crowd applauded, Emily knelt beside Titan, whispering something only he could hear. The dog's eyes softened, and he leaned into her, his scar glinting in the winter light. Rachel, standing nearby, wiped away a tear. Carver, watching from the back, nodded to himself. Some truths didn't need words. Years passed, and Ashwood's winters remained harsh but beautiful. Emily's sketches filled a gallery in Rachel's bookstore, each one a testament to resilience. Titan, graying but steadfast, never left her side. One evening under a starlit sky, Emily sat on her porch, Titan curled beside her. She smiled, a rare thing now commonplace, and whispered, "We made it, didn't we?" Titan huffed softly, his eyes closing, content. The town never forgot them. The foundation grew, pairing dogs with those in need, a legacy of hope born from a woman and a dog who refused to give up. And in Ashwood, where the snow fell heavy, the warmth of their story lingered like a promise kept. If you enjoyed this story, please like and subscribe for more tales of courage and connection.